Hello everyone, this is the Bevry Catchup number 18 on the 16th of May for Sydney people. Um, Now we're here with Edwin
Hello?
and no one else because they're all punks. Not really, they're just, I don't know what's going on. But
They're not nice.
Alright, so we'll start off with our stand up. I made lots of progress on Cheney yesterday. At like the wee hours of the morning because I woke up, figure out how it could actually work. So I went and did some coding for it. Um, so we now have like an extension system that should be a good way forward that embraces Jed Watson's suggestions on how it can work. And it does so in like a fairly neat and nice way. Um, so I'm working on doing the documentation for that, and it'll be ready for mass consumption by Wednesday when it's presented at SID.js. So that's really good news because Cheney is awesome. Um, all right, let's move over to your stand up, everyone.
Um, well, I read the docpad.coffee file under the lib directory. I didn't read it line by line going, okay, so this does this in the database and then blah. I just scanned the code and actually saw what was going on a little bit of a higher level. Some simple thoughts would be, well, the docpad on install command and install command. I'm thinking maybe that could be put in a different file. Really, at this point, I'm just trying to find ways to reduce the 6,000 lines into a little bit more of a reasonable amount.
Yeah.
Um, I'm thinking you have one file per class. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's the case. There's good reasoning for it. Well, like it's hard to split up classes into multiple parts. Well, especially for the models, like splitting out backbone models into multiple parts is quite difficult. The plan with the backbone models would be that they become their own npm packages. The plan with the Docker core, things like the install, this is probably like something interesting because like I had like a quick skim of your pull request about the things, and I think like probably something worth doing is like um, perhaps like it's something I've realized with Jed stuff as well, like contributing Keystone, which is like at the beginning I'm just like this is all crazy, it's so inconsistent or whatever, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
like I'll chat to Jed about it before I touch anything, and then he'll be like, okay, it's done like this for these reasons, right? Like this exception is there for these reasons, and it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? So there's like a few things
Mm-hmm.
like the column alignment, like I think the heading stuff you've done is really good in that pull request. The things like column alignment, like I generally like will avoid doing that as much as possible, just because it's hold up, let me pull it up. Where is it?
Are you are you possibly talking about Zirian's request, pull request? This one?
Ah, it's Ziren's, it's not yours.
No.
Ah, man, okay. Alrighty, so we can chat about this then.
Yeah,
Right. Man, I'm so sorry. But it's I didn't get enough sleep last night. Um,
I
so
understand.
yeah, so there's things like the headers is like a good idea, but the column alignment it really should have been asked like why that wasn't done in the first place. There was like one change where like a console.log statement was repositioned, and that could be potentially dangerous. Um, and there was a few bits of moving of certain like the changes of the require statements inside the docpad coffee. Like there is reasons why I think they had those particular naming conventions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there's
With the column alignment, you mean like variable equals blah, that being aligned at the same column.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, okay, just to make sure.
yeah. Because like then you spend most of your time aligning things rather than actually writing code. And like in the coding standards, we go into like where increases like readability or like comprehension, then it's like worthwhile. Like there's certain things where like it's definitely good, but I think just like variable assignments and things like that, or most things, it's not that particularly useful. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so um, bu- bu- so like I will go through it at some stage, but it's probably not something that will be merged in its current form because it's just I don't know. It's then just like a competing coding standard of one that's been used for like many years, right? Um,
Yeah,
so because it's not adding any consistency to it, it's more just like changing the existing consistency. Um,
yeah.
so that's one thing to think. But considering that's not your pull request, what was it? Let's go over your feedback again because like I completely missed the box on that.
Okay, so I have this file with all of my things.
Yeah.
Um, as I understand it, DocPad uses its own middleware, maybe?
Yeah. So the server action is what sets up the server and starts listening on it. But it delegates it over to like I think 4 or 5 different middlewares, a middleware for 404, a middleware for 500 pages, um, and a middleware for injecting headers, and a middleware for rendering an actual document, or
Mm-hmm.
directing the URL to our rendered document, right? Because we are a static site generator. Um, so that's fun and like that's delegatable. Um, probably splitting them out probably doesn't offer that much advantage um, outside of DocPad because there's one thing that is like a common desire, a common urge, and it's to like split out something into many multiple files. And then like once you've actually split it out, you're just like I haven't actually accomplished anything besides splitting things out, right? Like it doesn't actually like increase comprehension. Like I've experimented with this in like many projects, and I've just been like, this doesn't actually like improve anything. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I see your point.
yeah,
The
but like
comments
I think
really help, by the way.
yeah, probably within 10,000 lines for all of it. I mean, that's like a big, big, good deal. Eventually, for the
Okay, okay,
models,
stop for a
yeah.
moment. I'm not sure what happened, but for like 20 seconds, I couldn't, you were a
Then
static.
the the internet here like drops out. Like it's really fast internet, but I think there's like a problem with the router or something. It like drops out every like 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Um, so yeah, things like the installing can be abstracted out. Things like the plugin system will be abstracted out. Like the installing will probably be abstracted out with the plugin system. The plugin system will probably knock off like at least 1,000 lines of code, or probably like maybe
Yeah.
20% of the total code base from DocPad, which is good. Um, then from
And
there
that'll
we
be
can
its own little thing, right?
yeah, yeah, will be its own npm package. Then things like that,
Okay.
once the plugin system is done, then we'll be able to abstract out the actions, right? That's when it gets really exciting because the server action would then become its own plugin. The command line interface would become its own plugin. Everything will be converted into plugins, right? Then from that,
Okay.
we would then abstract out the models, and we'd probably do so by not making them backbone models anymore. So that way, the actions on the models are actually events instead of them being traditional actions. So
Mm-hmm.
that way we can keep the models very basic and very minimum while having all the actions and the complexities delegated outside. That's a controversial change. Like, I'm not sure whether that adds benefit or whether it just adds headaches. But the other things of abstracting out actions and abstracting out the plugin system adds tremendous benefits, and it'll cut the DocPad code base down to like pretty much nothing, except for the models.
Okay.
So, but the
Well, I hope I
models
can
will
help with
probably
that.
become their own npm packages, right? Even in the backbone state, once we get the actions out. Um, so that that's a good benefit there. Um, now,
Okay.
yeah, I think that probably covers that bit.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see if you didn't cover anything.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I noticed is I was reading through the file. The first 1,000 lines are setting variables and values, basically prep code.
Yeah.
Can something be done about that?
Um, Not really. I mean, like you could totally like in the class not set those things at all, like for all those null values and things like that. But then you have no way of actually easily knowing what things are available to the class. Um, so I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like in every single like class-based app, I've always seen that even if they just set the properties to null, you can still like easily identify which ones are properties and kind of what they do. Um, Now, ideally, like this thing comes into yesterday, you raised the point about documentation and providing good inline documentation for these things. So the way forward here can be split off into two areas. One way is we have documentation inside the code, which is probably a good idea because at least the code's always going to be up to date, right? And if we abstract the documentation out of the code, then we risk the documentation becoming out of sync. When if the documentation is in the code, then it's never going to get out of sync, or if it does, then I mean that's just it's going to happen.
That's the coder's fault.
Yeah, exactly right. Like the creator wanted to code rather than to add a few lines of documentation. Um, so I mean, like it probably is able to be documented a lot better, and then that way we could actually use the all of that 1,000 lines of prep as to actually like explain what all these properties and things are for. I'm not actually
Mm-hmm.
sure like how that could be done. You started looking into that, so I mean, eventually you would probably come up with the nifty solution. Using something like
Yeah.
JSDoc would just like I if we can get something with the power of JSDoc, like that isolation that you mentioned, but then with the simplicity of something like the Doco language, um, then that would be really cool because I mean, like, there's no point in specifying like all these different, like just saying what the params are because you can already know what the params are because you can see the code, right? Um,
Yeah.
so it's more like, the documentation should explain what it does and how it does it and why it does it that way. When JS comments never actually go into that. They just say this is what it accepts. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so um,
Okay. I'm thinking I have some documentation in the code, like just a very quick description. This handles this.
yeah,
And so okay, so there's a bug here because the comment says this is what handles that. Um, but I think maybe it would also be good to have a document in the documentation repo, have more explained. This handles this through this, doing this. This was chosen because instead of that, because of that, this, etc.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So it's interesting because coming to Keystone, like there isn't barely any comment for the code explaining these things. And the thing is like if you're the core maintainer and you're writing the code, right? Then you already know exactly how everything's going to work. So it's very hard for
Yeah.
you to actually understand the complexities that you've already grokked in your head. So like as I'm approaching Keystone and contributing as part of the work I'm doing now, I'm actually like commenting like everything. So it's quite interesting. So like, as I experience like a code block is like comment, 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 comment. So like it's really interesting. Like just, now I understand so much about like what you were saying like a year ago or maybe a year and a half ago and what everyone was saying
Hmm.
about, I don't really understand anything, and like, blah blah blah, and it's like, yeah, I understand now. Like I can see that.
Yeah, because for you, you know exactly what does what, when, and where.
Yeah,
But for everybody else, they have to read the source code to do that,
yeah,
to understand that, and if they're not able enough to do so, it's a little bit of a problem.
yeah, yeah. So I think like, I'm really looking forward to what you come up with those things because I think it would be like tremendous benefit, even regardless of like the abstractions, like these, if you start commenting things and that stuff, we can merge like right away. Um, it's probably
Yeah.
best to maybe like comment things individually, like, particular sections, because maybe something in the comment would be like incorrect in some aspect or create some confusion about the way it actually works. And if everything's bundled together, then that's like a lot of back and forth. So I mean, it would be good to just like perhaps like comment a little bit, comment that, and then I can be like, yep, that's correct, merge, and then comment a little bit, and I'll be like, that's not exactly what happens. Here's what's happens, and then okay, merge, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking not doing piece by piece by each pull request, but maybe doing, like, for example, 200 lines,
Yeah, yeah,
and so that it's easier to check.
yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. At
All
some
right.
point in the code,
Yeah.
I'm going to continue here.
No worries.
It's almost last thing. Um, at some point in the code, there was this send a notify event to plugins like Growl.
Yeah. So,
Wasn't that in a plugin, or was the integration for Growl in the plugin?
originally, the Ground stuff was within DocPad, then Delapolite abstracted it out into a plugin. In hindsight, that was a silly idea because we have no way of installing global plugins currently in DocPad. So I mean, you have to install the Growl plugin on every single project, right? And it's just like no one does this anymore.
Ah,
Um,
mm-hmm.
so abstracting the plugin system out will add support for like global plugins, I guess to like some extent. But there's big issues with global plugins. Like I mean, they should be avoided at all costs. So like abstracting out the Growl stuff was like phrase to the idea. But the idea behind that is now instead of going directly to the Growl library, instead we emit a notify event that then is then listened to by particular plugins like the Growl plugin, and then it can show
Mm-hmm.
the notification correctly. So then what happens is then like if you want to create like a different logging library or whatever it is, or a different notification library, you can do so.
Yeah, okay. I think maybe Zirin may have solved this with his latest pull request, but there's things like subscribe, track, identify, and the
Yeah.
comments they provide are exactly the same, and they still don't give you an idea of what they actually do.
Yeah, so I think what should happen there. So they weren't solved in. I'm not sure how many pull requests you sent through. I saw one that was. Hold up, let me check how many pull requests you actually sent through.
For the code, he sent one with 3 commits, I believe.
Yeah, so that's the one I saw. So that one just it doesn't address those things. It just adds like different formatting. It doesn't add any particular content. Wait, so use
Yeah,
colors in this right one tweaks, add editor config. Yeah, so those things are good. Um, so I need to comment on that one. But the idea behind those things is like it's for readability purposes, so you can scan through. So it's like, okay, this section of code is about track, right? This section of code is about this. So like you'll see like prepare in a lot of places, right? Or like you'll see
mm-hmm.
chain, and then like the chain is just followed by the at symbol, and it's like this is the most redundant comment ever. But then it's like so when you see like a function, you can instantly like grok its actual structure of the function.
Yeah,
But really, what it should have is like if something says like track or whatever, or like at the beginning of like each function, like at the top, it should actually go into complete detail about what this function like accepts, how it does it, and why it does it that way. Like those
yeah.
three questions should be answered on every single function.
I'm thinking I just had an idea for the documentation. Maybe just add a link in the code to the actual documentation
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that
So
the
I think for
big
like configuration options, that makes like a lot of sense. And like for other things, it'll be interesting. Like in a few places, you'll see I'll link to a GitHub issue um, at a particular point. Like maybe there was like a bug or something, and or like whatever reason, or there was like a GitHub issue specifically for that functionality. So in like a few rare places, I'll link to a GitHub issue. But yeah, that's a good idea, and it'll be interesting to see how that could be integrated some more.
yeah. Let me check if I have anything else. Well, I was writing all of my thoughts in this file, and one of the last things is, right, got general idea of the flow of what DocPad does. Not too complicated, just too damn long. In all caps, that was.
Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Like, I mean, if it was like a JavaScript project, like you would probably abstract those things out because JavaScript doesn't have that class syntax. Instead, you just have to do dot prototype equals dot prototype equals, right? Um, so I mean, like there is benefits to abstracting it out, but I mean, like unless you're abstracting things out into packages, there's no benefits of abstracting them out into different files besides now having more files to actually read, which can actually be like a hindrance rather than a benefit. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like these are things that we'll solve eventually, but yeah, it is damn long, and I want to fix that as much as anybody.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was the end of that.
Nah, cool. That was really valuable. Um, all right, so things to talk about. We don't have anything highlighted. My right now, I just have like a big concern about have a talk at CamJS next week about interconnect and web components and WebRTC. And I
Mm-hmm.
need to like get interconnect in a place where it's ready to be able to do that talk. So like I'm trying to figure out like how the hell do I do that? And then like I have a talk on Wednesday about Cheney. So it's just like it's gonna be like this big balancing act trying to figure out how to do those things. Um,
Mm-hmm. I'd just
the
get a working model. That's all I would do.
yeah. Well, for
Excuse the excuse being I did not have enough time.
yeah, well, I think for the workshop, like the interconnect one's really important. I mean, the Cheney one, I mean, that doesn't matter if I don't get what I want done, but the interconnect one really matters. Um, so, all right. The other thing to talk about, while it's not related to our main focus, it's related to a past project, which is History.js.
Mm-hmm.
So the maintainer for that previously, so I wrote it, maintained it for about a year, then we forwarded it over to about 2 years of stalemate. Then it was what's the word? Not maintained anymore.
Uh-huh.
Um, then we forwarded it over to Andreas, and then he maintained it for a while. But now he's moved on to other things. So there's like a discussion in there about I'm just like, okay, hey, you know, can, who's maintaining this? Can we get a new maintainer? Da 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 da. And then it's like involved into like this discussion about like why hasn't it been supported, and it's a disappointment that it isn't supported. And then like at the same time, like if anyone read the thing I had on like npm, Isaac's GitHub issue on like how to help open source maintainers stay sane. Like there's a good discussion there. Like pretty much like um, it's interesting, but I mean it's just like you create a project, and then like you use it in a few other projects, and you maintain it for those things. But I mean if you're not actively using it, then there's no incentive to maintain it, right? Like if you are actively using it, then you should be empowered to maintain the project. But I mean,
Yeah.
to support a project without a paycheck when you're not actively using it is like a way to burn out. I mean, like you can't feed your family and you don't get anything done.
Yeah.
You're just solving other people's issues, and those people working at companies getting a paycheck while you're not. Um, so I mean, like it's involved in like this very finicky discussion, which there's not really any way to actually communicate these things um, without someone actually probably going through that experience, because I mean it's so easy to confuse maintenance and support, I think, as like a consumer of open source. um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really more deserving of like a proper blog post, um, with like a proper detailed examples rather than like anything in this GitHub issue can comprehend, because GitHub issues sometimes just turn into like bickering, which really doesn't like everyone's trying to communicate the points, but I mean it's impossible to sometimes do that. Um,
Yeah.
so it's interesting, but I mean, like, it does leave the point of History.js, like, how the hell does that actually get maintained? Because it needs proper automated testing in order for anyone to actually maintain it without going crazy, because it takes like 5 hours or so to run through the test manually. Um, and I
Shit.
mean, like, if you're doing like pull requests like all the time, I mean, like, that's a lot of like testing, right? So then,
Yeah.
like, the thing is then when maintainers say, hey, I want to jump on board, and then like say if they take that into a direction that doesn't actually help the project, or like if some accident like introduced an error, then like that's a lot of problems. So then it's just like the idea then is we could probably wipe all the code from the browser state history.js repo, um, and then I put back my code into the blupton/history.js1. I disable the issues on that. Andreas then does his fork on his own place. He does like gets rid of it. And then we just kind of maintain the browser state history.js. It's just like a listing of the popular forks instead. So that way, instead of just having one history.js, you have like many different history.js's. Like you have different flavors of it. Kind of like
Mm-hmm.
how the Linux distributions work. You have one official distribution, and then you have many different flavors. So I think that's really the way that it needs to be maintained, where we get rid of this entire concept of having one repo to rule them all into just having many different repos with none ruling them all. Now,
Mm-hmm.
GitHub's issue structure will cause like a lot of mayhem, because I mean, like if I wipe the code from the current repo, then it's going to restart all the pull requests, which is like there isn't a good way to accomplish this with GitHub, unfortunately. And like if someone forks that one, like ideally, like how I should have gone if I went back in time, like is that's how I should have done it originally, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
where I kept my one at at blupton/history.js, and then it was forked to the browser state, right? And that way we could just migrate the browser state repo to Andrews's personal account. His name, Mr. Einstein. Like I'm definitely not like saying, I think that it's not, I think we're arguing the same points. I just think that there's some definitions that have been mixed up. Like I think, definitely good history desk is being, should be maintained, definitely good. But yeah, like I think we're arguing the same points, but at some point our communication is just being messed up in the words. So, um, all right. Um, let's. Do you have any actions? By the way,
Um, Not so much.
no. Cool. All right. Again, I imagine like saying like that, like one of these. Don't never mind.
With
All right.
with
Okay.
other
Not the
history,
bullet.
huh?
Never mind.
With the history JS thing,
Yeah.
you sh I shouldn't be, I'm not in the position to be saying this, but to all the
Yeah.
people that are disappointed that it's not being maintained, try maintaining it yourself, if it's
Yeah.
so easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like, yeah. I mean, it's hard to. Like, I mean, you can definitely say that, right? And like, that's definitely like one of the points there. And this is why, like, the forking thing, like, this is why myself, like, I burnt out. This is why Andreas has burnt out. I mean, like, I can't even raise him. And I mean, like, there's a reason why this, yeah, there's a reason why the project is in the state it is. But I mean, like these meanings get lost in like words, and there's like you can't particularly communicate experience. Like communicating experience through text is the worst possible way to ever communicate experience. I've learned, like from this
Yeah.
issue. Um,
Really, the only way to communicate experience is showing it.
yeah. So, all right. So, all right for shout outs. All right. I don't have any shout outs currently, but you do. So what's your shout out,
Yes.
Emma?
It's what seems to be called Octotree.
Yep.
It's for Chrome or Chromium, and it basically adds to the left, like it adds a sidebar to the left which can be hidden, which shows the project structure of a GitHub repo.
Yeah. Cool.
They have an image there.
Yeah.
I
Nifty.
just I just found out
Do,
today.
do you know, some people don't know this, but GitHub has like a few hotkeys. So if you go to like the adjusted browse keys, like if we click that link and go to Octotree, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you're just on the normal thing, and then press the like letter T.
T.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. Let me disable Vimium. Exclude. Yeah. Okay. T.
Does it
Mm-hmm.
redirect you to like a listing of like all the files?
Yeah, like yeah,
So I
file
mean, it's not
finder.
a tree format, but it kind of is accomplishing the same. Um, it's not a tree format, but it does list all the files. So I wish GitHub did a better job at like indicating these hotkeys. because I mean, like I only know that by chance. Like I wonder what other hockeys they actually have, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's nifty. Um, all right, and you've got
And
another shout out as well.
yeah, this is more like something to discuss.
Yep.
Um, my family is arriving, so soon I have to leave, but I'll just
Yep.
put it out there. It's an improved version of the CoffeeScript compiler.
Yep. Yeah. So I saw this. I think I actually funded it, um, as well. Did I? No, I didn't. That's right, because so they funded it like really shortly. Like I think I found out about it like very, or maybe once it was already closed. Um, I mean, it was funded in the pretty early days of funding open source code. So yeah, this is like a really cool project. The guy behind it, Michael Ficara, he's one of the maintainers of the normal CoffeeScript thing, and he's forked it to the CoffeeScript 2. Um, it is a bit different. We would probably wait for it to reach like the version 2.0,
Like
like
stable.
the stable, like to be stable before we use it because it has introduced like a few. Um, Hold up, I just got some. Um,
I don't want to leave you speaking alone, but my dog
yeah.
won't stop barking for a while.
All right. So the yeah, so I mean it's really cool, but we would wait for that to become stable before we implement it because I mean they've implemented some really controversial changes in the past. Like they got rid of the at symbol at one point, and we're like in a specific use case they got rid of the at symbol. But I mean, the use case that we use it, like we use it to like for the chaining, right? A standalone at symbol, and like that would have completely busted Dotpad up. So then, like, luckily enough people like shouted like this is bad, and then it got like that change got reverted. Um, so yeah, so I mean, it's definitely cool. It's definitely worthwhile, and like the abilities it unlocks is really nifty. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. All right. So let's leave it there then. Enjoy your night, everyone.
Thank you. You enjoy your day.
No worries. Thanks. All right. See you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.